Let us begin. We are in the 6th chapter of the book, The Mother. The 6th chapter is what we fondly call the four powers, the chapter of the four powers. I'll just give a recap of what we have done so far. We have discussed that this chapter has more or less 3 sections. The first section gives a broader perspective of the universe, the various gradations of forces in the universe, in a way, what we call the cosmology of Sri Aurobindo when it comes to integral yoga and the impersonal divine, the creation, the creator, the hierarchy and philosophy of creation. All of these we covered. The transcendental, the universal, and the individual, and so on. In that, we also saw the four absolutes that Sri Aurobindo described: Tat, Sat, Aditi, and Parameshwara, Parameshwari. This was broadly the first section. Now we are in the second section, which is the four powers of the mother. And the third section is about the preparation necessary, how to receive the forces of the mother. We see the various powers described of the mother, and yet we are unsure of what is the preparation required of us. And that is where all of this comes in. What are the normal pitfalls? What is the preparation? That Sri Aurobindo gives at the end of this chapter. Within the four powers, last week, we studied a broad introduction of the four powers and also in detail the Maheshwari aspect of the mother. Maheshwari aspect deals with calm wideness, wisdom, knowledge, and all these aspects and how they are at work. Today, we take up the Mahakali aspect of the mother. Mother Mahakali stands for strength and force. The broad context of the relevance of this power is that whether it is in the outside world or the inside world, there is a need for force and strength to execute what is necessary to be executed. In this universe, there is always a play of forces, the manifestation of the divine and the persistence of the anti-divine. It exists, this battle exists at the macro level and the micro level. We are at a time when there is war that is destroying thousands of lives and even more so impacting economically, practically most of the 7 billion people that are on this planet, directly or indirectly. This struggle, this wrestle goes on, this wrestling goes on. The idea is, even in the inside world, as we try to make spiritual progress, there is resistance. There is resistance that comes from our own nature, our own deeply embedded tendencies that have been with us in our constituent elements. Broadly, we call them sattva, rajas, tamas. We know that. Patterns that are embedded in us, behaviors that are not Godward, but still a part of us. In our traditional literature, Kama, Krodha, Moha, Mada, Moha, Matsarya, all the 6 Shadvikaras. In the modern terminology, it could be depression, it could be arrogance, it is of course the ego. A lot of these things are there. And Mother somewhere says that the human life is too short for us to overcome even one of these weaknesses completely if we relied solely on our own capacity to conquer ignorance. It is a stunning statement. We all know many of us struggle with anger. Our life passes. Our dark hair becomes gray hair, and yet our pattern of anger does not really change, or it does not disappear. We've seen it in many other aspects also. The point being, there is a need for the divine force to work in this world, both outside and inside. And we need that force to break down the obstacles and clear the path for us to go forward. This is the context in which Mahakali needs to be seen. There is a need for truth to be accompanied by strength. A weak truth cannot survive in this world. Beauty and harmony unaccompanied by the strength to protect them do not last in this world. So these are the various aspects in which one can understand, because one might say, oh, God is supposed to be sweet, God is supposed to be compassionate, God is supposed to be kind, God is supposed to be a mother caring for us. Yes, indeed, all of those. But God is also the one with terrible power. After all, omnipotent, all strong. In the traditional literature, we have many places where fierce gods and goddesses are described. Rudra, Bhavani, Parashurama, all of these are aspects of the divine power that is coming down to establish the reign of light and truth. The divine violence is required to subjugate the evil power that seems to emerge from time to time. When the mother was asked, what is Mahakali like? There are many discussions of Mahakali with mother, but in this one, the mother describes, she is not like Kali. I can tell you that she is not black. She doesn't stick out a big tongue, and she does not wear a necklace of human heads. So mother is obviously referring to the description of Kali as is very common. Now here, perhaps it is appropriate to discuss a little bit of hierarchy of gods. We may have touched upon it earlier, but it bears repetition because it's an important topic that all of us need to comprehend. There are gradations of consciousness, supramental, overmental, and so on, and then coming closer, the mental, vital, and physical. The gradation of consciousness of God that we can connect will depend also on the level of sadhana that we undertake. The same God can also manifest at many planes. For instance, if we take on the Devi side, on one hand, Aditi, the Supreme Mother. But when we come down, we have Grama Devata. In many parts of this country, each village has its own Grama Devata. Often, they are in the consciousness plane of mid-vital to lower vital. Their region of influence is limited, sometimes geographically, sometimes in other ways. What they can offer you can be limited as well. A Grama Devata often cannot give us cosmic consciousness. us. It cannot give us self-realization, but she may be able to grant us protections of some kind or driving away of certain difficulties for a certain period of time on a transactional basis. Often transactional engagement with gods emerge from our own vital consciousness. When we raise above the duality and we emerge into a broad surrender to the Divine Mother or to any other god as we progress in the sadhana, we do not continue to bind ourselves to a transactional equation of give and take. The same god or goddess may appear at many levels. So a vital level goddess could appear with a certain gruesome form also. That is where the demand of that god or goddess can also be certain vital rituals like walking on coal or maybe putting some spikes into the body or these kind of things. They're all belonging to the vital plane. But as we work higher and higher, we approach gods of higher consciousness whose sadhana may take longer, but whose rewards are also lasting. At the lower plane, the rewards are transactional, they are not lasting. The change of consciousness belongs to a higher domain of gods. So what Mother is pointing out here is that do not confuse Mahakali with Kali, and Mother Kali has a very wide range of descriptions. On one side, there is a very crude and vital manifestation which can be represented in a gory way with a tongue sticking out and skulls. But that same description can also give you love and succor and care and tenderness as a mother can only give you. So the Raudra and the Shanta aspects can both belong to Kali depending on whether it's a lower vital plane or a higher vital plane. The Mother is pointing out the distinction. There's a very long conversation of the Mother, close to 2.5 pages, where she describes various vital aspects of Kali and how she has been deformed by human imagination and how she is very different in the higher planes. Sri Aurobindo goes on to say, the Mahakali form is usually golden, of a very bright and strong golden hue, golden color. She does not come to punish us. She comes to work with us. She also, Mahakali also works with our nature. She helps us overcome obstacles. MP Panditji says, the way to invoke the force of Mahakali is first to strengthen the base, to build oneself on a solid foundation, physically, vitally, and mentally. We have to be very strong so that one can withstand her pressures, support her action without shrinking. So strengthening the base is the first part. And then he goes on to say, secondly, a continuous aspiration, a sincerity to push forward whatever resists change, whatever is to be eliminated without mercy, without self-deception, to scrutinize and bring out from oneself whatever stands in the way and expose it to her workings. So, in a way, Mother Mahakali is strong and her action of her force also is strong on us. Calling for surgery, if you will. She will be the most effective spiritual surgeon. Another sadhak writes to Sri Aurobindo, I saw a light like a golden thread coming from the Mother to me. And then he writes something else, and Sri Aurobindo says, the golden light is the light of the divine truth on the higher planes above the ordinary mind, a light of supramental origin. It is also the light of Mahakali above the mind. The golden light is also often seen emanating from the Mother like the white light. So this is how Sri Aurobindo says that golden light is the light of Mother Mahakali in the higher planes. Also, the hibiscus flower, red hibiscus in particular, the mother has given the name dynamic power flower. It is indispensable for progress. In the traditional pujas also, this is called Mandara in many Indian languages. It is used for Devi Puja. It is the sign of power. So that is the background, and now we proceed into the chapter itself, taking sentence by sentence. This section begins, Mahakali is of another nature, not wideness but height, not wisdom but force and strength are her peculiar power. There is in her an overwhelming intensity, a mighty passion of force to achieve, a divine violence rushing to shatter every limit and obstacles. All her divinity leaps out in a splendor of tempestuous action. Tempestuous actions mean tempest is like a storm, no? So that is the kind of force that she applies. All her divinity leaps out in a splendor of a tempestuous action. She is there for swiftness, for the immediately effective process, the rapid and direct stroke, the frontal assault that carries everything before it. Terrible is her face to the Asura, dangerous and ruthless, her mood against the haters of the divine. For she is the warrior of the world, of the worlds, who never shrinks from the battle. It's a very poetic and beautiful description. You can almost visualize a Tandava when you see this. A divine violence rushing to shatter every limit and obstacle, tempestuous action. She is there for swiftness, for the immediately effective process, the rapid and direct stroke, and the frontal assault that carries everything before it. Terrible is her face to the Asura, and dangerous and ruthless her mood against the haters of the divine. For she is the warrior of the worlds that never shrinks from the battle. The truth is, my friends, in our own journey, very often we find that our highest aspiration and the average level at which we are able to act, we jump into action. There is a wide gap. Our highest aspiration and our average action, there is a wide gap. We have a choice. We can say, this is my nature and I'm working on it and I'm doing my little bit, and we can keep on plodding and plodding and plodding for years. At another point, we may reach saying that I am tired of my nature. I can't deal with this anymore. Disgust takes over. And then we can invoke the force of Mahakali to work on us in this way. The mother says the reign of truth can be established when humanity is disgusted. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Humanity is disgusted with its present level of consciousness. That is when the reign of truth can come. Somewhere in our inner journey, the day we get disgusted with our own incapacities and we invoke the higher force, she comes like this. When the old resists being replaced by the new, it is Mahakali aspect of the Divine Mother that is called into action. When the old resists being replaced by the new, that is when the Mahakali aspect of the Divine Mother comes into action. A large clearing of nature, that is when she comes. Then there is another sadhak who has written to Sri Aurobindo that she was going through a very difficult time and she was feeling a lot of negative forces working and a lot of weaknesses coming out. And then she was trying to hold herself hard and fight out. And then she passed the room of another sadhak. I passed by Vai's room and felt that the Mahakali forces of the mother were around me. I also felt that her very name would create fear in the hostile forces. As I thought of her with feeling, suddenly all was clear. As I thought of Mahakali with a feeling, everything was clear. So talking about the dark feeling, Sri Aurobindo says, it is the force that attacks everyone in the ashram who can at all be attacked in this way. Such a force is naturally met by the power of Mahakali. You felt it while passing Y's room because it is always there with Y. And it is by that he meets the suggestions of this force when it comes. So when the dark force comes, this sadhak Y has been meeting it with the strength of Mahakali. The mother's name called with faith is usually enough to meet this force. It disappeared at once because it is a falsehood which cannot stand once the light of the truth touches it. So this is how it is not just a theoretical exposition, but Mahakali's force works with us when we work and invoke. Intolerant of imperfection, I'm continuing further. She deals roughly with all in man that is unwilling, and she is severe to all that is obstinately ignorant and obscure. Her wrath is immediate and dire against treachery, falsehood, and malignity. Ill will is smitten at once by her scourge. When we take up the yoga of transformation, when we take up the job of working on our known weaknesses very methodically, the Mahakali power of the mother is standing by us to support us, provided we call her, provided we invoke her, provided we read this chapter every day or every other day. Try to make it a part of us. Indifference, negligence, and sloth in the divine work she cannot bear. She smites awake at once with a sharp pain, if need be, the untimely slumberer and the loiterer. Our nature is such that our insincerity opens doors for negative forces. We want to get rid of our weaknesses, but in a moment of weakness, we succumb to it. This is the repetitive story of our inner journey. We seem to have won the battle. For 6 months, everything looks okay, but again it resurrects like a termite. But what is required for that progress to be made is complete sincerity, a commitment. And that is where this sharp pain will come. She smites awake at once with a sharp pain, if need be, the untimely slumberer. Slumberer is one who is sleeping. Loiterer is one who is just roaming around meaninglessly. We have a spiritual goal that we remind ourselves of every 6 months, and then we are busy leading a normal life. We know sadhana is necessary. We don't do much of it. We know meditation is necessary. We don't do much of it. We know reading of Mother and Sri Aurobindo is a direct way to connect to their consciousness, yet we don't find adequate time for it. This is loitering, which is common in many of our lives. The impulses that are swift and straight and frank, the movements that are unreserved and absolute, the aspiration that mounts in flame are the motion of Mahakali. Her spirit is tameless, her vision and will are high and far-reaching, like the flight of an eagle. Her feet are rapid on an upward way, and her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. Again, poetry of Sri Aurobindo, right? These are meditative sentences on Mahakali. If one knows some of these sentences by heart, one can just, wherever one is sitting, just remember these sentences, invoke them. They change the nature of the vibration in our being. The impulses that are swift and straight and frank, the movements that are unreserved and absolute. Mother was actually very frank. She would not, based on what we read and people who have interacted with her, she was not one for sugarcoating. She would be blunt. Yes, she may give that punch of Mahakali, and maybe after 3-4 days, she may be the tender Mahalakshmi. But she did what was necessary for our inner being. That is how she worked. She would not spare those who worked with her said. Her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. Succor means being tender, supporting, helping, caring. And Sri Aurobindo was asked, what do these words mean? It means it is her general action in the world. She strikes the asuras. She strikes also at everything that has to be got rid of, the obstacles in sadhana, etc. And then he points out, in your case, mother does not use much of Mahakali's force and pressure and all of that. So when you talk so much about the battle and all of that thing and how she strikes, where does this word succor come from? Why is she tender? Sri Aurobindo goes on to explain. For she too is the mother, and her love is as intense as her wrath. She has a deep and passionate kindness. When she is allowed to intervene in her strength, then in one moment are broken like things without consistence. The obstacles that immobilize the seeker, or the obstacles that immobilize, or the enemies that assail the seeker. Sri Aurobindo further says, this force of Mahakali, it is felt as if something swift, sudden, decisive, and imperative. I say allowed because the supreme action of Mahakali is comparatively rare. The action of other powers or a partial action of Mahakali is more common. Okay. There is also other aspects. The first point that is required for the action of Mahakali is also our inner strength. And many people cannot bear that action of Mahakali. They have not done the necessary purification to receive her force. In a way, there is a reason why Mahakali is coming after Maheshwari. Because Maheshwari is that large and wide, calm. If a little bit of drop of force comes and there is an agitation and don't have the strength to receive, how can we receive the force of Mahakali? There is a large clearing required, as it was pointed out in another letter. So that is how the mother works on us. And also, the mother acts, one more comment. Kali rarely acts, this is Sri Aurobindo, sorry. Kali rarely acts in the mind. In the higher domains, she is the power of love, which pushes us towards progress and transformation. In the vital, she is the power of destruction of falsehood, hypocrisy, and ill will. We talked about these gradations of consciousness and how the manifestation is different. Sri Aurobindo is pointing it out here. In the higher domains, she is the power of love, which pushes us towards progress and transformation. In the vital, she is the power of destruction of falsehood, hypocrisy, and ill will. All that is good, truthful, and progressive is never destroyed by her. On the contrary, she protects and sustains it. Continuing further, If her anger is dreadful to the hostile, and the vehemence of her pressure painful to the weak and timid, she is loved and worshipped by the great, the strong, and the noble. For they feel that her blows beat what is rebellious in their material into strength and perfect truth, hammer straight what is wry and perverse, and expel what is impure or defective. So look at her action on different parts of our being, on different parts of our nature. Her action is different. What has to be thrown out is thrown out. What has to be reformed into material for strength, she does that. What does that mean? What is this material in our nature that needs to be modified? Let us take, for example, our favorite issue, anger. Krodha. Vital support comes to anger, ego gets entangled, and we burst out. We don't see what is right and what is wrong. We often regret it. We hurt people. All of this. This is krodha, this is anger. But anger can be molded to serve as the strength and force necessary to move forward in the righteous path. That is Raudra. There is no ego, but there is strength. There is no feverishness, but there is power. There is no vital indulgence. There is just a calm, righteous action. So the force of the mother can transform our vital anger into something of strength and force that is required for Mahakali's action, which is Raudra. This is how she takes elements of us and raises them to their highest capacities. Here is another question from a sadhak. Is it possible to have that relation with the mother in which she would feel free to correct me and tell me without any kind of consideration for my own feelings what I must do and what I must not do? So he's almost invoking and inviting the force of the mother to act upon him. So then she says, for a relation to exist in which the mother can do as you say, the sadhak must not be afraid of the Mahakali aspect and ask only for sweetness. He must be able to take the blows of Mahakali as a blessing. There are a few here who can take this attitude even imperfectly, but it is with them that the mother has this relation. So we should have the capacity to trust the mother that even when the blows come from inside or outside, things go wrong in our life, something falls apart. Yet we should be able to say, this is happening in the larger context of mother guiding my life because I have surrendered to her. Something breaks. It could be a relation. It could be an aspect of our career. Or it could be something that forces us to relocate when we don't plan to. After we surrender, somewhere the larger context should be continuously kept in mind. Someone asked the mother, what is the nature of Mahakali's blow? Because normally we feel that she will just punch us and we will be in a bad shape. But mother says something else. It makes you feel very happy. Mahakali's blow. It makes you feel very happy. It gives you a sweet warmth in the heart like that. Then further question, does one have to aspire for it or does it come naturally? The mother says, yes, one must have a sincerity of the aspiration, sincerity in the aspiration. Really want to progress. One must truly say, yes, I want to progress with sincerity. Whatever happens, I want to progress. Then it comes. But as I said, it comes with a power of plenitude which holds an intense joy. When one has taken a decision, one has decided to stop something in oneself, just not to repeat a stupidity one has committed, or to do something one finds impossible or difficult to do, and which one knows should be done. And when one has taken the decision and has put in the full sincerity of one's will, well, then if a terrible blow comes to compel you to do what you have decided to do, it is a blow, but you feel glorified. You are quite happy. It is magnificent, you see. You feel something magnificent in the heart. So this is how the blows of Mahakali are. It is not necessarily trauma. It is not necessarily painful. It can actually have the redeeming feature. It is like a surgery. Sometimes after surgery, you feel a certain rawness in that portion, but something difficult has been removed. Those who want to progress quickly welcome even the blows of Mahakali, because that pushes the difficulties more rapidly. Continuing further, but for her, what is done in a day might have taken centuries. Without her, Ananda might be wide and grave or soft and sweet and beautiful, but would lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. But for her, what is done in a day might have taken centuries. And look at the description of Ananda that Sri Aurobindo gives here. Without her, Ananda might be wide and grave or soft and sweet and beautiful, but would lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. In Savitri, the description of the mother of might answers to what Mahakali is. A.B. Puraniji says, the mother of might had power and was helpful in keeping up the upward movement of the evolution of life. In the human world, she is keeping watch over the battle of the bright and somber powers, the dark powers. She works to help the unfortunate and save the doomed. She responds to the cry of the oppressed, and she topples down the thrones of tyrant kings. I smite the Titan who bestrides the world. I am Durga, goddess of the proud and strong, and Lakshmi, the queen of the fair and fortunate. Further, Mother talks about Mahakali power. Mahakali has a particular way of seeing the work. When one has the total vision, one can see that she is describing here how it is possible that the four powers can act in their specific domain, but are sometimes overruled by the larger vision. Mahakali sees her side of the work, but when one sees the whole, they say it is not yet time. So this gives you an idea why Mahakali force doesn't work all the time on us. Continuing further, last paragraph of this section. To knowledge, she gives a conquering might, brings to beauty and harmony a high and mounting movement, and imparts to the slow and difficult labor after perfection an impetus that multiplies the power and shortens the long way. Nothing can satisfy her that falls short of the supreme ecstasies, the highest heights, the noblest aims, the largest vistas. Therefore, with her is the victorious force of the divine, and it is by grace of her fire and passion and speed if the great achievement can be done now rather than hereafter. the beginning of this description, it gives an idea of how the Mahakali power works with other powers. How does Mahakali work with the power of Maheshwari, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati? For example, in the case of Maheshwari, to knowledge, she gives the conquering might. Many times, if we take the spiritual knowledge, truthfulness, what we often see is there is a tendency of weakness associated with such descriptions. Oh, bechara bhala aadmi tha. Poor guy was a good guy. Sad situation he fell to. We all say that, don't we? The idea is that somehow in this world, we have come to a conclusion that what is standing for truth often is weak. It needs to be protected. It doesn't have the strength in itself. What the force of Mahakali does is to that Jnana Shakti, she also gives Kriya Shakti. It is not only the knowledge in isolation that is ineffective, but actually the strength that supports it. So that's how to knowledge, she gives a conquering might, the ability to establish the world for that knowledge. Similarly, with Mahalakshmi, with Mahasaraswati, all of this. Further, some comments here relating to the traditional description of gods and Mahakali. Sri Aurobindo says, Durga combines the characteristics of Maheshwari and Mahakali. Elsewhere, Sri Aurobindo writes, the combination of Krishna and Mahakali is one that has a great spiritual power in this yoga. And if the names rise together in your consciousness, it is a good sign. Kali is Krishna revealed as dreadful power and wrathful love. Krishna and Kali played a very strong role in Sri Aurobindo sadhana itself. When one sees record of yoga, you see these references to Krishna and Kali continuously coming together. It is also said that the force of Mahakali prepares the ground for the entrance of Mahalakshmi, where the riches, the joy, the ananda, the beauty, the harmony, all of them, after all of this clearing is done, Maheshwari provides the vision of what is to be done. Mahakali sweeps away whatever obstacles are there. Mahalakshmi comes in, bringing the harmony, the joy, the beauty, and then the work goes on in meticulous perfection in the domain of Mahasaraswati. Somebody wrote to Sri Aurobindo, has anyone here concretely experienced the intense action of Mahakali and successfully come through that? See what he says, successfully come through that. Because it appears that it is so strident, the force, that one may not be able to withstand it. So Sri Aurobindo writes, yes, there is at least one instance in which it was called down by the sadhaka and he met it full. There was a violent action shattering his old samskaras and attachments into atoms, and he came through perfectly all right. There is also a description where the action of the French Revolution was the vehement death dance of Kali, trampling blindly and furiously on the ruins. So this is something that is going on. Somebody wrote a clarification to the mother, to Sri Aurobindo. Why is the mother working in the form of Maheshwari in me? Why is she working so slowly? If she worked in the form of Mahakali, everything troubling me would flee from fear, and mother's luminous sun would rise in me. The sadhaks, the disciples are also writing poetically. And Sri Aurobindo says, Mahakali can work only when there is a calm inner being and a resolute will facing without disturbance all the difficulties. When there is not that, then it is only possible for Maheshwari to work in order to bring her calm and wideness into the being. Going on, mother's comment, the wrath of Mahakali manifests from time to time and acts all right, but the effect of it doesn't last because those who answer to the adverse force do not want to be truly cured. They are not sincere. She's talking about sadhaks when the same weaknesses keep resurfacing again and again. It is a good reminder to all of us. Are we being sincere or are we opening doors? Sri Aurobindo referred to this in the very first chapter. No? When we are trying to surrender, don't expect the divine power to come and keep doing this again and again, because you are repeatedly opening the doors to the falsehood. So that goes on. There is also a description of Kali, Shyama, Mahakali being at the overmental level in a golden color. So here is another clarification in a letter that Sri Aurobindo gave. When does Mahakali act? The mother uses the method you speak of, the Mahakali method. 1, with those whom there is a great eagerness to progress and a fundamental sincerity somewhere, even in the vital. Our vital sincerity or vital insincerity is the root cause of 90% of our difficulties, no? So sincerity has to go down into that level. So 1, she works at the Mahakali force, 1, when there is eagerness for progress and fundamental sincerity even in the vital. 2, with those whom she meets intimately and who she knows will not resent or misunderstand her severity or take it for a withdrawal of kindness or grace, but will regard it as a true grace and help in their sadhana. Many people during the ashram time used to write very complicated letters about how mother saw them that particular day. If she gazed into their eyes, they are very happy. But if she somehow did not get time to give them more than a flower and looked away, or the mother appeared strong, so then, they used to write letters to Sri Aurobindo, the mother did not look at me, did something go wrong? Many of you who have read letters know this. And it's not 1 or 2, it's like over years that kept on coming. So mother, it appears, did not use the force of Mahakali on such situations or individuals who were capable of such misunderstanding. She used it only with those who trusted her to act on them even severely where it was required for their sadhana. So on our side, we should note these 2 phrases: eagerness to progress and fundamental sincerity even in the vital. Then we can work. Okay. So there are many descriptions of Mahakali. I have to, mother says, take for instance, this poor Mahakali. You have multitudes of Kalis, means many number of Kalis, one more horrible than the other, some absolutely terrifying and horrifying. And they sometimes become quite repulsive beings who are exclusively human formations. That is, the human form given by the imagination of the mind's capacity for all of these things. There may be in that a vague reflection of the force of Mahakali, but it is so diminished, deformed, and dwarfed, brought within the range of human consciousness, that truly she can very well deny that it is she. So she writes how many people have misrepresented Mahakali force and all of that. So my friends, this is the description of Mahakali. Broadly, we have seen many aspects. I'll just read the last sentence of it. Therefore, with her is the victorious force of the divine, and it is by grace of her fire and passion and speed if the great achievement can be done now rather than hereafter. We all need to take help of this force of Mahakali. Into one of the sadhaks, Aurobindo wrote something interesting. I don't have the exact reference in this collection of letters. He was when invoking the force of Mahakali, it was he was advised to do so reading both the Mahakali and Mahalakshmi sections when you are invoking Mahakali. So I thought that was a very insightful guidance to all of us, because maybe what will work on us also is a force that is moderated to our incapacities and capacities to hold the force of Mahakali. So if you are planning to do a sadhana of Mahakali, I would encourage you to look at that. Read both sections of Mahakali and Mahalakshmi together. This is one thing. The other thing is, I know many of you will not do this, but I'm also stating it for the sake of completion, because you know that this is the force of Mahakali that will break obstacles. And many times, we humans have this very ingenious capacity to find obstacles outside with other people than inside with ourselves. So we don't want, let us not try to be mischievous and say Mahakali force should work on him or on that person or in this institution or that place. That is not our place. Our place and our concern is about us and what we do. So don't try to say, Mother Mahakali, go act on that situation. No, that is not at all to be done. That is not in the line of our sadhana. So that is the thing. There is also one last thing I will mention. It is about an episode in the ashram. There is a very beautiful write-up about it of almost 3 pages. So I won't go into all the details here, but I will share something very beautiful about how accessible the 4 powers are to all of us. In the ashram, there was a Shobha Mitra. She was very, very active in the fine arts domain, theater, music, art. She would receive artists who come, and during Mother and Sri Aurobindo's time, many famous artists across the country would come and give performances there. Anyway, so there was a time when 4 powers was being presented in the ashram theater to the mother, and Shobhadi was supposed to be Mahakali, representing Mahakali, and she was not able to feel at ease and feel at right. And at one point before the performance, she went to the mother and said, Mother, I don't know what this Mahakali consciousness is. You are sitting there in front of you. How can I present Mahakali? So then the mother said, you keep calling Mahakali, she will come to you. So the rehearsals were going on. Nothing great was happening. That sense of dissatisfaction remained. Finally, the day of the actual performance arrived. And in her own description, as her scene came, she jumped on the stage with her knife, with her sword. And the force of her performance was such that as soon as she jumped, the sword broke into 2. And one piece went and fell near the mother. And here she was holding this. She continued her performance. She said that there was a humongous amount of power that she felt as she was performing. She was feeling that I will just, with 2 striding leaps, I landed on the stage with great force. Under the impact, my sword broke into 2. The upper part landed in front of the mother's feet. Such a power came down into my body that I could not be bothered about anything or anyone. My body. So the performance went on, and at the end of it, as her part concluded, my body was trembling visibly and I did not want to catch anybody's attention. There was uncontrollable trembling of my body. Then people tried to control it. They could not. Then they took her to the mother. As soon as I entered the room, the mother turned her gaze on me and she laughed. She stretched both her arms, beckoning me towards her. As I sat in front of her, she held both my arms. She took my hands into hers, concentrated intently upon me. So she goes on to write all of it. She was silent, but what power she radiated. Through her hands, I experienced an extraordinary divine strength, and gradually the trembling slowed down and she recollected. And then mother said, do you know what you have done, my dear child? You have invoked Mahakali's presence in your body. It was very good. It was very good. And then Shobhadi goes on to say that, some other things. I will actually forward this write-up in the group so that you can all, read it in its original form and benefit from it. It is very beautiful, the description. So that is how close we are to reaching to the four powers. We just have to open, and the Divine Mother is gracious to pour that aspect of the Divine Shakti into us. So with that, let us take inspiration from Shobhadi's episode, that the four powers are as close to us as this, and let us aspire to the Mother that we grow in the consciousness of these four powers. Thank you.